was a rarity in Midland, and any incidents that did occur were typically minor: petty theft, occasional vandalism, or the odd bar fight. Serious crimes, especially violent ones, were almost unheard of. However, on December 10th, 2015, Midland was rocked by a crime that shattered the town's sense of security and left its residents in shock. Marcus Williams, 45 years old, was a lifelong resident of Midland. Born and raised in this small Kansas town, Marcus was the youngest of 3 children in a working-class family. His parents owned a modest auto repair shop on the edge of town, which they ran for decades before passing it on to Marcus when he came of age. The Williams family had always been respected in Midland for their hard work and dedication to the community, and Marcus continued that legacy with pride. From a young age, Marcus had a natural aptitude for mechanics. After finishing high school, he chose not to pursue college, opting instead to work alongside his father in the family business. Over the years, Marcus became known as the go-to guy for car repairs in Midland. He was a skilled mechanic, but more than that, he was a kind and dependable man who treated his customers fairly and with respect. Despite his reserved nature, those who knew Marcus appreciated his quiet sense of humor and his willingness to help others. In his personal life, Marcus was more of a solitary figure. He had married young, but the marriage ended in divorce after a few years, with Marcus retaining custody of his son, who was now a teenager. Marcus maintained a good relationship with his ex-wife, and his son was one of the few people with whom he shared a close bond. Outside of his work and his responsibilities as a father, Marcus kept to himself, spending most of his free time working on projects in his garage or fishing at a nearby lake. Cassandra Fudge, 48 years old at the time of the incident, was also a native of Midland. She grew up in a middle-class family, the eldest of 2 children. Cassandra was a bright and ambitious student, known for her intelligence and determination. After graduating from high school, she left Midland to attend college in a nearby city, where she earned a degree in education. It was during her time in college that she met James Fudge, who would later become her husband. Cassandra and James returned to Midland after their marriage, where Cassandra began her career as a teacher at the local elementary school. She quickly earned a reputation as a dedicated and caring educator, beloved by both her students and colleagues. Cassandra was known for her ability to connect with children and inspire them to achieve their best. Her passion for teaching was evident in everything she did, and she took great pride in her work. In her personal life, Cassandra was seen as the perfect wife and partner to James. They had been married for nearly 20 years and were considered a model couple in the community. However, beneath the surface, Cassandra struggled with feelings of unfulfillment and dissatisfaction in her marriage. Despite her outwardly successful life, she often found herself reminiscing about her youth and the dreams she had once had. These feelings were compounded by the monotony of small-town life and the pressure to maintain the image of a happy, successful couple. James Fudge, 49 years old, was a well-respected figure in Midland. Like Marcus and Cassandra, James had deep roots in the town. He was born into a large family, the eldest of 5 children. From an early age, James was known for his strong work ethic and his sense of responsibility. These traits served him well as he grew older and began to build a life for himself in Midland. After high school, James pursued a career in construction. He started as a laborer, working on various projects throughout the region, but his ambition and leadership skills soon led him to establish his own construction company. Over the years, his business grew, and James became known as one of the most reliable contractors in the area. His company handled everything from residential builds to commercial projects, and his reputation for quality work and fair dealing earned him the respect of both clients and competitors alike. In his personal life, James was seen as a pillar of the community. He was deeply involved in local affairs, participating in town meetings, supporting local charities, and serving on various committees. His marriage to Cassandra was viewed as a partnership of equals, with both being prominent figures in the town. To outsiders, the Fudge household seemed to be the epitome of stability and success. However, as with many relationships, there were underlying tensions that were not visible to the public eye. James was a man of strong principles, particularly when it came to family and loyalty. He valued trust and honesty above all else, and he expected the same from those closest to him. When he began to suspect that something was wrong in his marriage, these values were put to the test. His suspicions about Cassandra's infidelity slowly consumed him, and the thought of betrayal by both his wife and his cousin was more than he could bear. As his doubts grew, so did his anger, setting the stage for the tragic events that would soon unfold. These three individuals, Marcus Williams, Cassandra Fudge, and James Fudge, were all products of their environment, a small town where everyone knew each other, and where appearances often masked deeper, more complex realities. Marcus Williams and Cassandra Fudge had known each other since childhood. Their shared history and past affection had left an indelible mark on both of them. Although their paths diverged after high school, their feelings for each other never fully disappeared. Marcus and Cassandra first met in high school. They were inseparable during their teenage years, sharing countless memories and experiences. Their relationship, while never formalized, was marked by a deep emotional connection and a mutual understanding that transcended their youthful romance. When Cassandra left Midland to attend college, the distance put a strain on their relationship, and they eventually went their separate ways. Marcus stayed in Midland, working in his family's auto repair shop, while Cassandra pursued her education and eventually married James Fudge. By the summer of 2014, Marcus and Cassandra had both lived through significant life changes. Marcus had gone through a divorce and was raising his teenage son as a single father. Cassandra had built a successful career as a teacher, but her marriage to James had begun to show signs of strain. Both found themselves reflecting on their past and the choices they had made. For Cassandra, the prospect of reconnecting with Marcus was both exciting and unsettling. She felt a mixture of nostalgia and guilt, knowing that her current life and marriage were far from perfect. The opportunity to rekindle their relationship came unexpectedly. Marcus and Cassandra ran into each other at the Midlands Summer Festival, an annual event that brought together residents from all walks of life. The festival, which featured local vendors, food stalls, and live music, was a staple of Midland's community life. For Marcus and Cassandra, it was a chance to catch up and reconnect with the familiarity of their past. Their initial conversation was filled with warmth and genuine interest. They reminisced about their high school days and discussed the paths their lives had taken since then. Both were struck by how easily their old bond had reawakened. The connection they had once shared seemed to be as strong as ever, and the familiarity of their conversation provided a comforting escape from the complexities of their current lives. In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Cassandra began to meet regularly, initially under the pretext of casual catch-ups and friendly conversations. They would arrange to meet for coffee or lunch at local cafes, places where they could talk privately without arousing suspicion. These meetings quickly became more frequent and more intimate. They began to discuss their feelings about their lives and relationships, finding solace in each other's company. Cassandra confided in Marcus about her dissatisfaction with her marriage. She described how James, while a good man and a dedicated husband, had become distant and preoccupied with his work. Cassandra felt that the passion and connection that had once been a hallmark of their relationship had faded over the years. Her sense of unfulfillment was compounded by the routine and predictability of her daily life. She missed the excitement and intensity of her youth, and Marcus represented a link to that more vibrant and fulfilling time. Marcus, in turn, shared his own struggles. He talked about his divorce and the challenges of raising his son as a single parent. The weight of his responsibilities and the loneliness that had come with the end of his marriage had left him feeling isolated. The renewed connection with Cassandra provided him with a sense of comfort and companionship that he had been missing. He found her presence to be a source of emotional support and a welcome distraction from his everyday challenges. As their meetings continued, the nature of their relationship began to shift. The emotional intimacy they shared started to give way to physical attraction. The boundary between friendship and romance became increasingly blurred. Both Marcus and Cassandra were acutely aware of the risks involved in pursuing a relationship that went beyond friendship. They were conscious of the potential consequences for their personal lives and the impact it could have on their families. The affair between Marcus and Cassandra was characterized by a combination of passion and guilt. They were deeply committed to each other, yet they were also painfully aware of the ethical and emotional implications of their actions. The relationship provided them with a sense of escape from their respective disappointments, but it also brought with it a heavy burden of secrecy and the risk of discovery. As the affair progressed, both Marcus and Cassandra were forced to confront their feelings and their responsibilities. They were caught between their desire for each other and the realities of their existing relationships. The more deeply they became involved, the more difficult it became to maintain the facade of normalcy in their daily lives. By autumn 2015, James Fudge's suspicions about his wife Cassandra's behavior had intensified. Initially, he noticed subtle changes. Cassandra's increasing absences from home and her avoidance of direct answers about her whereabouts. She frequently mentioned staying late at work or attending extra meetings, but these explanations began to feel insufficient as James observed her growing detachment and erratic behavior. James's concerns turned to suspicion when he saw Cassandra and Marcus Williams together at local spots around Midland. Their frequent meetings, which seemed casual at first, grew more concerning as James noticed the pattern. Despite his initial reluctance to confront the situation, the mounting evidence forced him to face the uncomfortable reality. The pivotal moment came when James found a recent restaurant receipt linking Cassandra and Marcus. The date coincided with one of Cassandra's claimed late nights at work. This discovery was the final piece James needed to confirm his fears. He decided to confront Marcus directly, hoping for clarity and resolution. On December 5th, 2015, James visited Marcus's auto repair shop unannounced. Marcus was working on a car when James entered, his face showing a mix of anger and resolve. Without preamble, James addressed the issue head-on. "Marcus, I know about you and Cassandra. We need to talk." Marcus, taken aback, tried to remain calm. "James, I don't know what you're talking about," he said, though his anxiety was evident. "Cassandra and I are just friends reconnecting from the past." James's frustration boiled over. "I've seen the receipts, the messages. I want to hear it from you. What's really going on?" Marcus attempted to defuse the situation, explaining that their relationship was platonic and that they had merely reconnected. "James, I assure you it's not what you think. We've been friends, but there's nothing more." Despite Marcus's reassurances, James remained unconvinced. His anger and sense of betrayal were palpable. "You think you can just brush this off? You've been seeing her behind my back. How am I supposed to believe there's nothing serious happening?" The confrontation was tense and emotional. James was not calmed by Marcus's attempts to explain, and the argument ended with James storming out, still deeply agitated. James began to closely monitor Cassandra. He followed her on several occasions, noting her comings and goings. His surveillance revealed more than he had anticipated. On one occasion, James saw Cassandra and Marcus together at a secluded park, their body language suggesting a level of intimacy that went beyond mere friendship. This sight, coupled with other evidence James had gathered, confirmed his suspicions of an ongoing affair. James also found items and gifts in their home that were consistent with the times Cassandra had claimed to be working late. Each discovery compounded his sense of betrayal and injustice. His emotional turmoil grew as he realized the depth of the deception. James felt a profound sense of anger and betrayal, not only towards Cassandra, but also towards Marcus, his cousin. The confrontation with Marcus had not resolved anything, and the additional evidence of Cassandra's infidelity only fueled his rage. The affair between Marcus and Cassandra had not only disrupted their personal lives, but had also created a deep rift between James and Marcus, who had once been family. What followed was an outcome of pent-up emotions, unresolved grievances, and a volatile mix of anger and betrayal. James's mounting frustration and sense of betrayal drove him to a breaking point. He had been following Cassandra and Marcus for weeks, gathering evidence and confronting them in various ways. The confrontation with Marcus at the auto repair shop had only intensified his feelings of anger. James's trust in his wife and cousin was shattered, and he felt a deep sense of injustice that clouded his judgment. On the night of December 10th, James made a decisive and fatal choice. After a day spent stewing over the situation, he decided to confront Marcus one final time. The confrontation was not planned as a discussion or a negotiation, but as a confrontation with the potential for violence. James was driven by a combination of rage and desperation, feeling that his sense of betrayal demanded a reckoning. Marcus was at home, spending a quiet evening alone. The evening had started normally, with Marcus working on some personal projects and trying to unwind from the day. He had not anticipated any trouble and was unaware of the impending danger. James, meanwhile, was increasingly agitated as he made his way to Marcus's residence. Armed with a handgun he had purchased recently, James was determined to make his presence felt. Around 7:30 p.m., James arrived at Marcus's home. He parked his car a short distance away and approached the house cautiously. The atmosphere was tense, with James's footsteps echoing in the quiet neighborhood. He reached the front door and, with a sense of grim resolve, knocked forcefully. The knock was loud and insistent, reflecting James's growing anger. Marcus answered the door, surprised to see James standing there, his demeanor cold and hostile. Before Marcus could react or ask what was going on, James pushed past him and entered the house. Marcus, taken aback, tried to calm the situation, but the confrontation quickly escalated. James wasted no time. He pulled out the handgun he had brought with him and pointed it at Marcus. The sight of the weapon filled the room with a palpable sense of fear. Marcus, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to reason with James. "James, put the gun down. Let's talk about this," he said, his voice trembling. But James was beyond reasoning. The anger he felt was overwhelming, and his sense of betrayal had clouded his judgment. "You think you can just take everything from me? Cassandra, my life, everything?" James's voice was filled with raw emotion as he struggled to control his rage. Marcus tried to move away, but James's anger was too intense. The argument became a shouting match, with James accusing Marcus of ruining his life and betraying him. The confrontation was chaotic, with both men shouting over each other. In the heat of the moment, James's grip on the handgun tightened. Without warning, James fired the weapon. The shot rang out, echoing through the house. Marcus fell to the floor, struck by the bullet. The violence of the act left James in shock, his anger giving way to immediate regret and horror. He had acted on impulse, driven by a moment of intense rage, and now faced the devastating consequences of his actions. Marcus lay on the floor, critically wounded. James, still holding the handgun, was paralyzed by the enormity of what he had done. The immediate aftermath was filled with a sense of disbelief and panic. James knew that he had crossed a line from which there was no return. His sense of justice had led to a violent and irreversible outcome. In the minutes following the shooting, James called 911, reporting the incident with a tone of urgency and distress. Emergency responders arrived at the scene quickly, but it was too late for Marcus. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and the police began their investigation into the shooting. James was taken into custody. The murder of Marcus Williams was a tragic and violent end to a series of personal conflicts and betrayals. The small town of Midland was left reeling from the shock of the events. The murder of Marcus Williams on December 10th, 2015, sent shockwaves through the small town of Midland, Kansas. The community, known for its tight-knit relationships and close family ties, was now grappling with the aftermath of a brutal and highly publicized crime. The investigation that followed was meticulous, aiming to uncover the full extent of the circumstances surrounding Marcus's death, while the subsequent trial sought to address the legal ramifications of James Fudge's actions. The investigation into Marcus's murder began almost immediately after the 911 call was made. Midland Police Department responded swiftly to the scene, where they found Marcus Williams lying critically injured. Despite the efforts of emergency medical personnel, Marcus was pronounced dead upon arrival. The police initiated a thorough investigation, focusing on several key aspects of the case. James Fudge, who had called 911 to report the shooting, was taken into custody at the scene. He was cooperative with the authorities, providing them with an account of the events leading up to the shooting. James claimed that he had gone to Marcus's home to confront him about the affair with his wife, Cassandra. He admitted to bringing a handgun and stated that the shooting had occurred during a heated argument. The police conducted a detailed forensic examination of Marcus's home. They collected evidence, including the handgun used in the shooting, spent shell casings, and other physical traces from the crime scene. The evidence collected was crucial in reconstructing the sequence of events. The forensic analysis confirmed that Marcus had been shot at close range, reinforcing James's account of a confrontation that escalated into violence. Witness statements played a significant role in the investigation. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices and a gunshot on the evening of December 10th. Their accounts supported the timeline of events provided by James and helped establish the context of the confrontation. The investigation also involved interviews with Cassandra Fudge, who was deeply affected by the murder of Marcus. She provided testimony about her relationship with Marcus and the nature of her interactions with James leading up to the shooting. Cassandra's statements were pivotal in understanding the emotional backdrop of the case, although her involvement in the affair added a layer of complexity to the investigation. James Fudge was charged with second-degree murder, and the trial began in the summer of 2016. The legal proceedings were closely followed by the local community, given the high-profile nature of the case and the personal connections involved. The trial aimed to address whether James's actions constituted criminal behavior, and if so, what the appropriate legal consequences should be. The prosecution argued that James's actions were premeditated and driven by a calculated desire to confront Marcus. They presented evidence showing that James had planned the confrontation, including his decision to bring a handgun. The prosecution highlighted the emotional turmoil James had experienced, but argued that this did not justify the use of deadly force. They contended that the shooting was an act of revenge rather than a spontaneous reaction. James's defense team, led by attorney Laura Adams, contended that James acted out of intense emotional distress. They argued that the confrontation with Marcus was fueled by his feelings of betrayal and frustration, but they also emphasized that James had not intended to kill Marcus. The defense presented evidence of James's mental state and the emotional impact of the affair on his behavior. They argued that the shooting was a tragic outcome of a highly charged emotional situation rather than a premeditated act of murder. Throughout the trial, emotional testimony from both sides painted a complex picture of the relationships involved. Cassandra Fudge testified about her affair with Marcus and the strain it had placed on her marriage. Her testimony added a personal dimension to the case and highlighted the deep emotional conflicts that had led to the confrontation. The jury deliberated for several days, carefully considering the evidence and testimony presented. On August 5, 2016, the jury reached a verdict, finding James Fudge guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict reflected the jury's conclusion that while James's actions were not premeditated, they were the result of reckless disregard for human life. James was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a decision that